Welcome, everybody. Welcome if you're watching the video, and welcome if you're listening to the podcast. It's my very great pleasure to have a long-time friend on the show today, and that's David Deane-Spread, or better known as DDS. And welcome, David. Great to see you.
Thank you, John. I'm delighted to be here, and thank you very much for inviting me.
Yes, no, thank you for your time. I know we've had some really, really interesting discussions over the time, and I'm sure this will be another one. And really what made me want to have you on was because I always see you as someone who is an expert in leadership, and some of the experiences you've had and roles you've had in life have certainly brought that out. And I'll get you to explain some of that to people in a moment. But
Sure.
leadership in small business, I deal predominantly with small business owners, and quite often they've started the business because they're good at what they do, because they're a tradie or an expert or a professional, something like that. And they start a business for all kinds of reasons, freedom, control, and so on. And then if they're doing okay, they grow and they start to take people on, and they might take an admin person on, they might take a salesperson on and start to grow the business. But now suddenly they're dealing with people. So really, that's what I want us to talk about today, David. But first of all, tell us a little bit about your background and your experiences in leadership.
Okay. Thanks, John. I began my leadership journey in the military. I first of all won a Duntroon scholarship, and then I elected not to pursue the university element of that, and I went to Portsea instead, which does the same military content without the university. I just wanted to get on with soldiering. I didn't want to become an engineer or a science-based army officer. I wanted to be a soldier officer. And so I went to Portsea instead, and ended up being assigned to the military police. And I really enjoyed that role. It was very exciting. It was very eye-opening for me. I ended up spending time with the Victorian Police. I did the Victorian Police Detective Training Program. I specialised in special investigations, and then later on covert operations. My last appointment in the military was as a 2IC of the Military Police School, where I was now training operators. And then I got headhunted into the Federal Narcotics Bureau, and I led first of all, I led an overt team for a very short period of time, and then quickly evolved to my natural skill set of leading covert operators. At the same time, I was also involved in another discrete agency that only operates offshore. And so when I was offshore, I was working for them, and onshore, I was working for the Narcotics Bureau. All the time leading teams and leading very highly trained, highly motivated individuals in high stakes and high risk situations. So my leadership had to be very effective, competent, and inspirational, asking these men and women to do very dangerous things. And so the first priority for me was to earn their trust and then to keep that trust.
Yeah.
Because I'm asking them to do risky stuff, and if they didn't have any faith in me or my leadership, then they wouldn't do it, or they wouldn't do well in it. I eventually left in 1990 because of the cost to my family. I lost my second family through them leaving me because I was hardly ever there, and moved into commerce, and where I deployed those skills in commercial activities. And I also then realized that my real passion was training other people to be better leaders.
Right. Yeah.
And that occurred because one of my flying instructor back in the day was actually an electrician by trade, and he went back to his trade. And then he came to me and said, and this is in 1997, he said, David, will you help me grow my business? And at the time, he had a half a dozen electricians, a couple of vehicles, and he was in a tiny little office in King Street in the city. We start so over the next. No, I actually stayed with him, working with him, or helping him as my first client, all the way through to 2017 when he sold the business for a whole heap of money and retired. And
Good on him.
at that time, he had well over 300 staff all over Australia, and had relocated his headquarters to Sydney. And I'd helped him grow that business from the get-go. And as it's funny now that so that was most of my clients, I've started with them when they were startups, small businesses, and then they've decided to scale, and
Yeah.
then they started sailing the business because it's now moving along, and in the end they wanted to exit or to sell the business. And so I've had three companies that have done that from startup through to scaling to sailing the business and then to selling the business. And so that happens over a period of time. So most of my clients stay with me for a long period of time as they go through their various entrepreneurial iterations.
Yeah.
And
Fantastic.
so that's been my journey, and I'm lucky. I love what I do. So it's a passion. It's not just a job.
Yeah, it's
That's
about
why I'm still doing it.
being passionate, being an expert in something, and there being a market for that what you're doing, and that's obviously the case. So that's fantastic. So
Yeah, it's
you would have seen what I'm talking about in terms of people that start a business and then they get to that point where it needs a leader, and quite often the business owner doesn't see themselves as a leader or doesn't want to be a leader. They don't want to deal with the people side of things.
that's yeah, that's really true, and it's quite interesting because most really good leaders don't choose. I want to be the leader. They do it because they realise that somebody has to do it, and they are actually believe in the purpose, and they believe in the people.
Mm,
And they don't let the ego part and the alleged privileges of leadership be the attraction. They are more attracted to doing a really good job and helping their people be great. They're the kind of leaders that we need. And so I do understand, as you say, the person who starts a business because A, they're good at it, and B, they probably want to leave a bad leader. And
yeah.
so the safest way to go is to have, well, I run my own business, and I'll just plot away, and I'm happy. And then
Mm,
they suddenly get lots of work because they're obviously good at it. And then, as you say, they have to employ people, and now they're unintentionally they've put themselves into a situation where leadership is needed. And even when they say they don't want to be a leader to their staff, the staff know that leader is the owner of the business, and they automatically will, no matter what you say, they're going to treat you like you are the leader.
mm, absolutely. And
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 so,
the more
yeah, go
people you
ahead.
get, the more lines of communication you've got, and the more room there is for things to come off the rails.
Yeah, 100%. And that's where they then say, well, how do I do that? How do I do that? And my focus is on the ABC, if you like, of leadership. And that
Okay.
ABC is the attitudes, behaviors, and conversations that people have when they're in leadership roles to make things happen.
Yeah, that's a
And
nice little acronym.
yeah, and that's my focus. And the reality is how we then deploy the ABC in those areas of the business that make everything happen. And those are always these areas: informal meetings, around the water cooler or just over lunch in the lunchroom. Formal meetings where they have different types of formal meetings. Then there's the alignment meetings or alignment between the leaders and ideally through everyone. Are we all on the same page? Another area that where this leadership behavior of ABC matters is when they're doing delegation of work. So delegating a task to either an individual or a team. How well is that delegation delivered?
Yeah.
Will impact on how the job gets done. And then there's the final bit where the leader is the coach in the business.
Yeah.
And most of the time we're finding these days, even in small businesses, but very much so in larger businesses, when I ask them, have you got time to coach your people to be great? They say, I'd really like to, but I don't have the time. And I say, well, why don't you have the time? And they say, well, because I've delegated. My team's fully busy. They're really busy, and I'm doing work that I can't delegate to them because they're already overloaded. So I then ask them, well, then have you got the right size team?
Yeah.
And if you don't have time to lead, and people do want and need leadership, the right kind of leadership, of course. And if you're not doing that, then you've drunk the Kool-Aid of do more with less.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's unfortunately a cost-cutting mentality that has really taken hold, and too many CFOs or chief financial officers or finance managers, whoever the peak finance person in the business is, they're really interested in cutting costs. But
Yeah.
they don't see the difference between a cost and an investment. They don't know the difference. And so they don't realize that the payroll is actually your biggest investment. And so they
True.
want
And
to cut, they want to cut it. And Jesus.
yeah, I've seen a lot of company demise come about as once the financial people take over control of the business. Because, as you say, they look at cost cutting and savings, and I've seen people get retrenched that were key to the business. But the financial people don't always look at that. It's just a case of reducing the numbers, reducing the overheads.
Yeah, the finance people are using lag indicators and they're trying to run everything from a spreadsheet. That's just not going to happen
No,
without a disaster taking place.
but just getting back to the lead, we're talking about leadership, and we've had a discussion before about the confusion that people have or is around between leadership and management. And sometimes people will see themselves as a manager but not a leader. And I want to use that quote from the book by Keith Cunningham. A Road Less Stupid is the book, which I highly recommend for anyone in business. And he talks about drinking the Kool-Aid as well in one of the chapters. But he says, leaders inspire, managers control. And to be successful in business, we need both. And I think a lot of people don't, particularly business owners that have started up and grown their business, don't understand the difference between the need for leadership as well as the need for management. Do you see that as well?
Yeah, very much so, mate. And I see a lot of people confusing the two roles.
Mm.
And then a lot of people being really good at one role rather than the other. When they in fact need both as an individual, they need to deploy both leadership and management within the same role. And it's a matter, and I ask them to look, think about yourself in this moment. Do you need to be a leader in this moment, or do you need to be a manager? And
Yeah, that's a good.
and then act accordingly. And I get them to list all the things that leaders do and list all the things that managers do, and get them to understand that how that applies to their business. So I'm very much of the view that at large, leadership development and leadership training is broken. And I'm a fierce critic of my own industry, if you like, because the results that I'm seeing from other organisations aren't making the difference that they promise. Whereas my little group of clients, we are winning, and they are selling their businesses, or they're sailing their businesses, or they're scaling their businesses, and they've gone beyond startup. And that's because we make sure that whatever we're doing is appropriate for that business and those people. There's no one size fits all. And so we actually have a look at what does management look like in this business, and what does leadership look like in this business, and let's list those things that they do. I mean, for example, at the moment, I'm working with a company that was a startup. In fact, the major shareholder and the CEO was my cook back in the day when I was running leadership programs in the bush for Rio Tinto and the like. And he was a professional diver, by the way, and he ended up working for Fremantle Commercial Diving and ultimately ended up buying it off the old guy who owned it. And I ran a leadership program for them back in 2014 because he knew what I did and he wanted all his troops to be trained that way. And during the conversation, we came up with they were most of the divers in that company were cleaning tanks, like mining company tanks and regional tanks, water supply tanks. It was very boring work, and so the turnover of staff was high.
Yeah.
And in the conversation that we had about it, I said, "Well, why don't we use a giant creep? Why don't we make a giant creepy crawly?
Yeah.
We got them to clean swimming pools. Why don't we create one to clean tanks?" And so they went down that pathway, and they're now called Dredge Robotics, and they are probably the premier business in Southeast Asia doing that. So we've gone from a startup now to a large enterprise, and I've been with them through that journey. And it was only last week I was running a program for them on this very topic of leadership and management, and how is it appropriate for that business, where they've got an R&D section doing robotics improvements, they've got a maintenance section because there's a lot of equipment. There's very much the people side of it because people are making all those things happen. And the people in the supervisors from the front line right through to the CEO, they are all doing both leadership and management. But it's done in a way that is appropriate to that business, which has got a lot of high-tech equipment, a lot of logistics, moving to remote areas. They've got massive amounts of heavy-duty trucks and equipment and control rooms to control the robots above ground, whilst the robots are below ground or in the water. So it's a very technically complex business, and the management side is very, very heavy duty because of the safety side of things.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's a corresponding need to be really particular about the leadership, and that has to be, as you say, as Keith Cunningham says, it has to be inspirational.
Yeah.
It has to be persuasive. It has to be influential. It has to be coaching on the one hand to inspire the best productivity, but at the same time, they've got to be able to deal effectively with unacceptable performance and behaviour without losing trust and respect. And so there's two arms of leadership. One is the inspirational side, and the other side is the correctional side, but done in a way that is actually in its own right inspirational.
Wow.
And so that's the conversation, behavior, attitude type of thing, the ABC, and we focus on that. And look, the results that we are getting is massive. I mean, Dredge is poised to move to now to really on the verge of global expansion, and that means that the culture has to be right.
I'm glad you
And
mentioned the word culture. Yeah. I was,
yeah, and culture is look. The culture is everyone's got a hand in culture. There's no doubt about that. It belongs to everyone. But the culture will be what the leader models and what the leader honors, what the leader ignores,
hmm.
or what the leader doesn't know about. And that
So,
those areas create, enable the culture to be whatever it is.
so the leader needs to be conscious of the fact that they are setting the culture, and a lot of it is them. It's how they act and behave and their attitudes, right?
100%, mate. I mean, it's like parenting in many ways. The children will not do as you say; they'll do as you do.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So the same thing happens in business because that's the way it is, and we're programmed like that. That's how we're programmed. That's how we develop.
Yeah, I went from well, I went from engineering into sales and then sales into management and then from that to starting my own business. But it was interesting, particularly the mental shift you have to make when you change those roles. And when I went from being an account manager, salesperson into a branch manager, um, I very quickly realized that I had to change my behavior because as an account manager and a salesperson, lunch times were long. There, my behavior was, although I got the results, the behavior wasn't one that I would want people working for me to do. So when I became a manager, I quickly realized, fortunately, that, hey, I needed to stop behaving that way and start behaving like a manager and a leader. It was because how could I say to people, well, don't do that when I've been doing it myself? You know what I
Oh
mean?
yeah, I
I've,
sure
I've,
do.
I've got to be the model.
I sure do. So and that sort of extends to um, another area. Like there's no doubt that one of the biggest things that a leader must do is to model the way.
Hmm.
But the way in which leaders treat people is another issue that's linked to that. And we've all heard of the golden rule: treat others the way you want to be treated.
Yeah.
And I think that that's not a bad starting point. But I believe in the platinum rule. And
Okay.
the platinum rule is to treat others the way they wish to be treated, which is not necessarily the way you want to be treated. And
Yeah,
so
that's a good point. Yeah.
a leader must actually learn enough about their people to know that, for instance, there are some people who are introverts and they don't like being praised in front of other people,
Yep. Yep.
and they'd prefer to be acknowledged privately. And so we don't want to embarrass people, and so that's how we treat that person. And then there's, I mean, I run an exercise which is quite revealing to all the people in the room when they're doing it. And I say, right, we're, when I stuff up, this is how I want to be treated. And I tell them, and I really I want it laid on the line, be straightforward with me, tell me what's went wrong, tell me let's make an agreement about the way we should be doing it, and then give me the opportunity to rectify the matter and
Mm.
hold me accountable that I won't let it happen again. I'm happy with that. I mean, it's a learning experience. And then I say, right, that's me. Now I'd like you all now to share with each other how you want to be treated when you stuff up.
Okay. I love that. That's good.
Now we've got there's two things happen there. First of all, we get to know how people want to be treated. We get to see more about who they are, and there's a sharing that is actually a bonding. And then I say, right, now, given all of those things that you've said, they all sound pretty similar. why don't we make a fresh agreement now and then stick to it about how we're going to be treated. These are the consequences of us stuffing up.
Yep. Yep.
And really the primary consequence really is acknowledgement of having done a good job. That's the primary consequence. But once we've got that point, we're now actually having an adult conversation, free of emotions, where people have actually shared how they want to be treated,
Yeah.
and now we honour it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that. And a mistake that a lot of people make, and I've made them when I went into a management leadership role, was
Yeah.
to think that you treat everybody the same, and you don't. And it came home to me when I had a sales guy who, good sales guy, I hired him twice, and I was trying to motivate him with the financial reward. And he's, after a while, he stopped me and he said, "Look, you're assuming I'm motivated by money." And I sort of thought, "Well, you're a salesman, so yes." And he said, "No." He said, and this was in Perth, and he said, "I just want all my competitors to know that I'm on the job, and I want them to fear the fact that I'm on the job. Oh, hell, we're going to have a hard time here because so-and-so's on the job." So it was an ego thing. He wanted to be known in the industry and in the city as being the salesman to fear, you know.
Yeah. No. Yep.
So a
That's good.
totally
That's
different
good insight,
motivation.
isn't it?
Yeah. So
Great
I
insight.
I gave him the biggest and best account that we wanted to crack and said, "Right, that's now your account. Go and crack that." And off he went, and he did. Um, so yeah, but
Wonderful.
it's making that assumption that everybody's motivated the same, or like you said, want to be treated the same. And it's just not the case. So it brings up the subject, David, of character and personality,
Mm.
both in the leader, but also in the people that are being led, and how you get that. Do Are leaders made, or are they developed, or are they born? Is someone born a leader, or do they develop leadership? What's
Well,
your
I
view
believe
on that?
that. Well, I believe that anyone can become a leader if they want to, provided they're willing to go through the personal and professional development that's required.
Hmm.
And I think that there's no doubt about it that effective leadership is both a personal development and a professional development journey that will never end. And so, first of all, what's motivating people to pursue leadership? That's a big deal. If they're there for the perks that go with leadership, well, they're the wrong people. If they want to become a leader to help other people to be great and to serve, then that's right. That works.
Hmm.
And very quickly we can see the difference between the egotistical show pony who takes the glory of others' hard work and actually steps on people's heads to move ahead, versus the person who's reasonably humble, reasonably vulnerable, and looks after his or her people, and puts them first. I mean, I was trained that way to be like that as a leader, and put my people first. They eat first, they rest first, they go on leave first. We make sure that they're comfortable first.
Hmm.
We look after them because at the end of the day, if you don't have leadership and followership are two sides of the same coin, and and that coin really is the ability to get things done. And a leader without follower is wasted, and followers without leadership, they'll wander. They won't necessarily know where to go and what to do, and do it as a team.
Yeah,
That's not putting them down. That's recognizing that there needs to be someone who's looking ahead, uh, looking over the horizon, because they're too busy doing stuff. They're in the here and now, doing the project, whatever it is. The leader needs to be saying, okay, what's next, and what is it that we can't yet see? How do I get up there and see over the horizon?
yeah.
And that's the leadership thing.
There's one of the signatures I use on my personal email. I don't know why now I put it on my personal email, but and I can't remember sadly where the quote came from, but it was, you know, good leaders keep their eyes on the horizon, but their hands on the tiller.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
thought that was lovely because you're looking to the future and the where you're going, but you're keeping
100%.
your hand on. So that's the leadership and I guess the management sort of components. So
Yeah, and unfortunately, in today's world, I think that too many leaders are caught up in management only,
mm,
and they're not devoting the time that they need to the leadership component of their role. Um, and a lot of that's been driven by the market, been driven by technology, been driven by the need for constant growth, which is another pet hate of mine.
okay, before we get onto that one, this, what came to my mind was, and I know this from the people that I work with, is that they're now becoming, they now fear being a leader and making decisions because of, because how can I put it? It's they're afraid of being, politically not correct or taken to task because of they're trying to get somebody to do what somebody's supposed to do. Like performance, we talk about performance management. I call it performance coaching. And I developed a program around that, which developed both the coach and the coachees, the people that are being coached, to like you said before, having the leader and the followers. But um, so it's about coaching. But these days, I think some of the business owners are afraid to coach or manage their people because they're going to get taken to the, Industrial Relations Commission or the union or whatever. It's going to erupt into something. They're afraid. They're and
Look,
so,
I'm right in the thick of that at the moment because, and why they are afraid is because the Australian government has recently criminalised um, the both the leaders and the company itself if they fail to deal with bullying and harassment. So there's a punitive component there which would make them even more terrified. Um, what 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 and what we're finding also there's a tsunami of mental health issues out there at the moment, all sort of triggered with COVID and now with the geopolitical issue, the cost of living crisis. All these things are really putting a huge amount of stress on people at large, and so we're now looking at an eruption of unacceptable behaviour. In the workplace, and indeed Australia has the highest global rating for bullying and harassment. Australia
really.
is it's the worst country on the planet for bullying and harassment.
And is that
And
because that is actually the case, or it's just that what we define as bullying and harassment is a lot less than it would be in other countries? How do you measure it?
um, well, it's being measured. Look, there's a company called EEO Specialists. Frank Acelatena is the CEO of that company, and they specialize in helping people to come to terms with what's bullying and harassment, what does it look like, how to prevent it, and they always call me in to actually deal with the clear and present behavior. So I deal with those difficult people. That's my primary thing, because you can't move the culture in the right direction if it's being sabotaged by people of a very small number of people who are behaving badly.
Yeah.
And so step one, let's clean up the bad behavior. Now, most of the time, bad behavior, people don't, let's call those people difficult people. Most of the time, difficult people don't mean to be difficult. There's always a reason. And so no one comes to work and says, today I'm going to be an asshole. No one comes to work with that unless you've got something wrong with you. And there are small numbers of that, no doubt. But mostly people are being difficult because of something that they believe is wrong. And what we've got to do is discover what that is, discover whether it's valid, discover whether it's just a perception or whether it's baggage from the past. And we deal with it and we resolve it. We always resolve them. Most of the time, people turn around and realize that, yep, I don't need to be like that anymore. And we deal with the root cause. If it's another leader or another manager or another team member who's behaving badly, that's causing them to behave badly, we deal with that as well. So we clean all that up. That's not over the top, but that's not over the top to deal with. But most of the leaders don't know how to handle that.
Yeah. Yeah.
They don't know how to have those conversations. And that's my area of, one of my areas of speciality. And I mean, I've been handling criminal psychopaths, or had been handling criminal psychopaths for quite a long time.
Yeah.
And so we know how to deal with them. And we deal with them respectfully, ethically, and efficiently. And if they are the psychopath, and there's a small percentage of people who are that workplace psychopath, there's no known cure for that. And so we move them on. We get rid of them. We actually move them out because they are damaging, and there's no known evidence of them being rehabilitated, if you like. But so really it's helping the company and the people, the leaders in the business, to have those conversations, to deal with all these complaints. And yes, they are growing. They've grown by the claims that have been made. I saw this figure the other day, have grown by 56% in the last couple of years.
Wow. Wow.
Right. So it is an issue in Australia, particularly. And frankly, it's keeping me very busy.
Yeah.
But it is not. I mean, my preference is to help the culture become the culture that it needs to be for that particular business. And step one is to deal with the unacceptable behaviours and performances. Deal with that first, and then get everyone on the right page and thinking the right way, and everyone's attitudes, everyone's behaviours, and everyone's conversations, because that's how things happen inside a business. Attitudes, behaviours, and conversations. And if we focus on that in the right way for that specific business, then we really get results. We get really good results. I mean, I've even got a client in Sydney who happens to be the son of my very first client. So I've now got intergenerational clients.
Fantastic.
He runs a company providing electric vehicles to rideshare drivers, the Uber drivers and what have you. And we've been working steadily since COVID to change the culture, improve the culture, and improve the business. And we're going from strength to strength. And last month, they were given an award as being one of the best places to work from an employee perspective. And that is a real benchmark. And that is what I'm encouraging my clients to do, to become the preferred employer in your particular space,
Yeah.
And then when you've got that, then you can actually all together, the whole business and all the people in it can now work at becoming the best provider or the preferred provider in their space. And that then enhances the value of the business
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
everyone's sake, you know. And I mean, I know you're involved in helping people getting ready to sell their businesses and to exit. Really, if you're the best provider and the best employer, it means you got the talent, you've got the right services, you got the right clients. I mean, the value of the business is at its at its highest.
Well, yeah, and it reduces the risk. I mean, the value of a business all comes down to, well, the financial side of it, but also the risk to the business going forward under a new owner. And
Yeah,
I mean, if that business is an employer of choice, where people want to go and work,
yeah, the
that's
preferred employer,
yeah,
the employer of choice. Yeah,
employer of choice. Yeah, thank you. That's what I was trying to get to. Um, and also with a great bunch of clients that like dealing with it. I did 2 customer surveys for clients, reasonable size Perth businesses, and it was interesting because in both cases, they believed that the reason people dealt with them, their customers like them, was because of their products, because they had particular products, or in one case, they had the Rolls-Royce product in a particular category, and they thought it was all about the product. And I did the survey for them. We composed the questions, but I did the survey by phoning people who had agreed to be phoned to just spend 10 or 15 minutes going through these questions. And the reason I did it in person rather than an email or a form was because when somebody answers a question, I could dig deeper. So if they gave a reason for something, I could say, that's really interesting. Why did you say that? And it was interesting because in the setting this up, I think we said, like, it'll take you 15 minutes. The person asking the questions isn't an employee. They're completely neutral. So be honest with them and blah, blah, blah. And some people said, oh, yeah, well, 15 minutes max. And some of those talked for like 30 or 40 minutes because once I started asking them questions, they just loved talking about it. And my point was that in both those cases, the number one reason that their clients liked working with them was because of their people. They just loved working with the people. The people, treated them well, respectful, got back to them, kept them informed of what was going on. So you just can't overestimate the value of having good people.
Oh, there's no doubt about it, mate. And the interesting thing is that your people will treat your customers the way you treat your people.
And yeah.
So if the leaders not treating their people very well, then their people won't treat the customers very well either. And so
Yeah.
that's another thing to bear in mind for
Yeah.
them, you know.
In both those cases, they had a really great internal culture in both
Yeah,
those businesses. And when I
yeah.
was doing my leadership management training business, which is probably when we met, around
It
about that
was.
time.
It was indeed. It
So
was.
I used to do a lot of cold calling, um, and get an appointment, go and meet with the business owner or the state manager or the senior person in WA. And it was interesting. I used to get to the appointment most times, like about 10 minutes before the appointment time, and go into reception, explain who I was, then wait for the person that I was meeting with. But in that 10 minutes, I could quite often pick up the culture of that business
Yeah, absolutely.
just by how I was treated by the receptionist, how other staff members coming in got greeted by the receptionist, how the person I was meeting, was I shown into their office or did they come out and meet me? And just the whole general feel of the place, you could pick it up. And
Very much so.
it was almost like I knew whether I was going to get anywhere with them or not within that 10 minutes.
Yes, it's very revealing. I mean, I always insist upon going into the business to feel what it's going to be like and what needs
Mm,
to be done. And really, I mean, the key really is that just the way all individuals are very much different, no business is identical to another.
correct. Yeah.
And really we've got to and I think that's one of the biggest issues with most leadership development programs. It's cookie cutter type approach, and there's a lot of theory, a lot of I don't use PowerPoints. I mean, we get down and dirty, if you like, with the attitudes, behaviors, and conversations for that business. It's totally relevant, and then we make sure that we then follow up after the training with deployment of those ideas on specific projects that already exist in the business. And that's where the management side comes in because they then measure that.
Right. So management is about measurement,
Yeah.
control and
Management
measurement.
includes measurement. It includes measurement. Um, it's really it's really about so we do strategy, right? Strategy is a planning thing. Um, and that needs to have the execution team leaders present, and often they're not. And then we have implementation, which is a management function, and then we have execution, which goes back to being a leadership function, leadership of the execution team, and
Mm,
operations, which is tactics and operations. But that's where things get done, and you need both leadership and management. You've got to measure it. The managers provide the resources, make sure the resources there. They take care of the logistics. And the leadership takes care of the people side of it. Inspiration, communicating the values, modeling the way, coaching, supporting them, earning trust, building trust.
yeah.
It's full on.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Oh,
full on. We've been going for quite a while, so we'll start to wind things up with some tips for business owners. But one of the things that you mentioned before is that a lot of business owners will say, I don't have the time to do this sort of stuff. And I know you've got a bit of a solution for that, or tips how you deal with someone who says, well, I just don't have the time. Where can they
yeah.
get the time?
Well, they actually do have the time. I've not found a leader yet who can't find an extra 60 minutes per day.
Wow,
And
60
they
minutes.
go, 60 minutes? What? I have to get up earlier? No, no, no. Just get up on time. I guarantee you that you are wasting time on emails, guaranteed, and that should be delegated. I went to a particular mine site. I'll quickly tell the story. I went to a particular mine site a few years ago to work with the mine manager, and he had the same complaint. I've got no time. As I walk into his office first thing in the morning, he'd already been there for half an hour plowing through emails. His EA was outside reading a Woman's Day magazine, and I walked in and he told me that. And I said, well, you're doing all your emails, so give all your emails to EA to do. You got the time to do it. She said, well, are you sure? How do you? But she, I don't want to dob her in, but she's reading a Woman's Day magazine, so she's clearly not busy enough. That's not her fault. It's your fault for not making sure that she's got enough to do. You're doing too much for her. She's your EA. She's meant to be helping you. And
Yeah,
so give her all your emails, give her a briefing, which ones to pass on to others, which ones to keep for you, and which ones she can deal with herself. Give her
okay.
that. He found he found an extra 45 minutes from that alone
Wow.
a day.
Yep.
All right, 45 minutes. I then said, so how many meetings do you attend that you don't really need to attend? You could actually look at the meeting notes afterwards. And when you do go there, they will defer to you because you're the leader, but you didn't really need to be there. In fact, you may in fact be interfering unintentionally from
Mm,
them getting on with doing what they're doing. He said, oh yeah, yeah, you're right. So I said, so, and out of politeness, people invite you to the meeting. You don't need to be there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't go. Don't go. And tell your other people, if you're not needed, don't go. You can look
Yeah.
at the meeting notes afterwards. But that's a big time waster. He picked up a good hour that a day. So that's an hour and 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And then I said, so how often, in other words, not going to going to meetings you don't need to go to. There's a huge waste of time everywhere with that. And then the final piece is the amount of firefighting people do. And when you're a leader, people keep asking you to help them, help them, help them. And a lot of the times you do because you want to help them, but you don't realize that you're actually disempowering them. They've got to learn how to help themselves. If they're asking you to help them do their job, what? What's going on?
Yeah.
And you're then doing their job for them. And so make sure that you don't spend too much time firefighting or helping people because really they need to learn how to help themselves. And that particular leader, the mine site manager, he was able to save another half an hour a day easily.
Wow. Yeah.
So, I mean, we're now talking 2.25 hours per day
Yeah. Yeah.
for that guy. And that's over a week, over a 5-day week.
That's a
That's
whole day.
12.5 hours, Yeah, it's a lot of
Yeah.
time. Now you can be the leader you want to be or do things that you know you want to do or need to do and you can't get to it. So,
Yeah.
and that also means triaging effectively. So, does the business have a triage system or is everything treated as urgent? And
Yeah.
that's a time saver.
People, yeah, people will put their monkeys on your back if you accept them.
Yeah, they'll let if you let them, they'll do it.
Yeah.
But management of time and most people don't really look hard in the mirror when they're trying to save time. And a lot of it, people are wasting time on purpose because they're avoiding doing things that have to be done, but they're not comfortable doing them. And
Yeah.
that's where it's a big trap, particularly if you're the business owner. No one's going to pull you up. You
No.
got to pull yourself up. You got to pull yourself up. I guarantee you, if you're a business owner, you are doing certain things that are time wasting to avoid doing things that are unpleasant or hard or challenging. And I really don't let that, and respectfully and caringly, we help them to get through it. In fact, I last week I was dealing with a difficult conversation exercise for these leaders, and then I got them to reframe the idea of difficult conversations, which most leaders dread. So when you know the process, there are no difficult conversations anymore. There are
Right.
no difficult conversations. They are conversations that follow a particular pathway, a particular pattern that is very human friendly and takes the heat out of everything. And that's how we used to deal with the criminal psychopath, was to have that long conversation, or with hostage negotiation, take the heat out of it,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then we can make an agreement.
I was smiling and laughing when you said about doing things that to avoid doing the things that we don't want to do. I laugh because I'm guilty of that. You know, I'll find
Yeah,
myself doing things and I'm thinking, well, I'm doing this, but I really should be doing that. But I enjoy doing this more. I'm going to
yeah,
keep doing this.
yeah. Like I used to get trapped like that, and particularly when I was starting the business of designing logos and designing the cosmetics of
Oh yeah,
appearance.
yeah,
And which I like doing, by the way. I like doing it. And of course, I'm not the right person to do that. I mean, you know, it's got to be done by someone who knows what they're doing in
yeah,
that space. And I don't, but I like doing it. But so I don't do it anymore because it's a time waster.
yeah. So some tips and then some ways that people can contact you if you're prepared to be contacted, or um, anything that you've got that can help people. I mean, I love the ABC thing. You know, we've
Yeah,
talked about culture, we've talked about leadership and management, and with the difficult people thing and the performance coaching sort of side of things. So try and sum it up for me, David, into a tip, something people can take away and remember. Base it
look,
around ABC.
yeah, look, the attitudes, behaviors, and conversations that go on in the business determine how that business is going. And it is largely determined by whoever is leading the business. Now, if the business owner is not being the leader, someone else is.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Someone else is. Now, is that leadership effective for the business's sake or not? And so, and whether, regardless of who the leader is that leadership being effective for the business or not? And it shows up in culture, and it shows up in most of the time people realize that, we could be doing better, but we're not. Why is that? And they ask that question. And that's where I can be of value. If people want to reach out to me, they can. Actually, LinkedIn is probably the best way to go. I am the only David Deane-Spread on the planet. I'm not hard to find. The only thing I would ask is that if you do wish me to connect with you, let me know as early as you can, because frankly, since 2002, my business has been largely with repeat business and referrals. So, I am sometimes not available for a couple of months.
Yeah. And just to
So
clarify, Deane-Spread is spelt.
DEANE hyphen SP for Peter READ. I'm the only guy there. Actually, the other way you can find me is by Googling attitudinal competence,
Okay.
because I'm the global leader in that particular discipline.
Do you run any workshops or sessions that people could tune into or, get value from?
My website is probably a good starting place, and that's Metatude, METATTUDE.com. That's not a bad place to contact me or to have a look at what I do, have a look at stuff. There's lots of resources there, videos, downloads,
Mm.
the whole range of things. There is a program which I'm going to be moving from one platform to another on how to really delegate effectively. And I'm urging that everyone in your business should know the delegation process for that business,
Yeah,
not just the leaders.
yeah,
That way you actually encourage better participation. There's an improvement of productivity by around 20% if everyone follows and knows about the same delegation process. It's a big area of improvement that any business can pick up.
yeah, yeah. Fantastic. And I know myself included, a lot of business owners are reluctant to delegate for all kinds of reasons, and then others do it, but they do it badly. Um,
Yeah,
Either way, yeah. So these are things that business owners need to learn at some point, because if they're going to grow and scale their business, well, they're just going to have to develop the skills. It's like you wouldn't go and play football at AFL level if you hadn't developed all the skills prior. Well, I hope you wouldn't.
yeah, yeah. I
All
mean,
those,
look, high performance, high performance in any field of endeavor requires training,
yeah, yeah,
and the elite sports people, the elite operational people, no matter whether you're talking military or commercial, you'll find they invest significantly in training. But here's the thing: the return on investment done right, makes it well worth it.
Mm. Yep. Yep. When I had the training business, as you know, that was our big thing, was getting a return for the investment, demonstrating that, which
100%.
most training courses and training providers don't do. That's what made us different. We were able to demonstrate that return on investment. And when I said before about knowing whether I was going to get business with a particular business owner or manager when I turned up, the people that needed our training the least are the ones that bought the most. And it was
Yes,
because it was their
I
culture was
knew.
to train their people. And they knew the value in doing that. And so they were the easiest people to sell to. The businesses that needed it the most didn't buy from us. And
No,
that's,
and that's a leadership attitude, isn't it? Because the people who didn't want it, that didn't want it, comes from the leaders, not from the people.
yeah,
Comes
yeah,
from the leader, and the leader's the one who's anti the investment. They see it as a cost, and that's stupid. But there's no doubt about it. But they've got two choices: either they're going to get a return on investment, or they're going to suffer the cost of doing nothing.
well, the standard reply to the quite common attitude of, well, what if I train my people and they leave? The response to that was, well, what if you don't train them and they stay? So now you've got
Yeah,
a whole bunch of
yeah,
non-performers because you're not training
yeah.
them. So,
Yeah,
um,
and then you also ask them, well, if you've trained them and they leave anyway, look in the mirror. They're probably leaving because of you.
yes, people don't leave a business; they leave a
They leave
leader, as you
people.
said before. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, the phone's going, so um, that was most inopportune. But anyway, uh, anything you want to say to sum it up, David, and we'll stop there. We could
Look,
go on forever, so we maybe do a follow-up session some other time.
I'm very happy to do more, mate. Look, I would advise the listeners and the watchers to think if they're in a leadership role, if they own a business, to seriously contemplate, do they want the business to succeed? Do they want the business to be sustainable? And would they like to see it grow a little bit even? Then they need to think about the right kind of training with the right people, and that they need to make sure that the training is relevant to their business. And it has to be another, and they need to demand a return on investment.
Absolutely. Yep. Well said, David. It's been great talking to you again, as always. And as I say, we could go on, but we will have another session and maybe home in on something like delegation or difficult people or something, and
Sure, mate. I'll be very happy to do that.
yeah, we can go a bit deeper into some of those things. It all helps. So fantastic. Need to
Thank you,
catch
mate.
up and share a beer or something at some point. And
Yeah.
good luck with your endeavors. And thanks again for being part of this.
Thank you, John. I've really enjoyed it. It's been a pleasure, mate. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Bye for now.
Bye. Bye.